Fellow Nigerians, I can clearly remember that when I was a child growing up in Lagos, any elderly person in my neighborhood who died was honored with an elaborate funeral, and the relatives and friends would kill a cow to feed those who would attend. But in today's Nigeria, when cows that graze farmlands are killed either accidentally or deliberately by farmers protecting their own crops, a group of bloodthirsty headsmen would kill human beings to justify their grief at losing their animals as they lament the threat to their livelihood. In Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa, Kaduna, and Taraba, and many other states in Nigeria, entire families have been slaughtered. Desperate times are indeed here in our country. Never did it cross my imagination that I would live at a time and in a country where a government elected by the people would threaten its citizens to either give up their ancestral land or face death. That, by any definition, is called a conquest. But today, the Nigerian government is calling it a viable compromise. A policy aimed at ending the bloodletting in our country. But only one side of the divide is smiling at the prospect of this plan. How can we go on with business as usual when so many of our men, women, and children are being killed? Even members of our security agencies are not spared. 7 policemen were recently shot to death by suspected armed robbers right in the Federal Capital Territory, where we have the seat of government. But more disappointing is the fact that their deaths were seemingly so uneventful, so usual, so commonplace, so expected, that there was no word of condolence from their commander-in-chief. It took former Vice President Atiku Abubakar to speak up for them. If not for him, their death probably wouldn't even have made the news. The Nigerian Army Officers' Wives Association has spoken out several times about the rising number of widows in army barracks all over the country. And in the midst of all the deaths around us, we have had only chaotic responses instead of coordinated ones. Policemen are dying, soldiers are dying, and civilians are dying even in greater numbers. When the death becomes so rampant in Nigeria that the only answer from the government to a systematic slaughter of Nigerians is to release the statistics of the number of killings that occurred during the 16-year rule of the PDP as their consolation. While seemingly boasting of recording lower numbers of death and mayhem in 3 years of ruling than the 16 years period of the PDP. What is happening in our beloved country? How can a nation with a police force and armed forces of about 500,000 be overwhelmed by a group of terrorists and herdsmen with an expansionist and 18th century jihadi agenda? And how can we as leaders say, there is nothing we can do to help the situation except to pray to God to help us out? We did not pray about the issue with the Shiites. We did not fast over the challenge with the indigenous people of Biafra. We did not call for a vigil when confronted with the Niger Delta militants. So why is it that when the challenge is herdsmen, we are suddenly in paralysis and can only resort to prayers? Thailand is a third world nation like Nigeria. But look at how they showed the world that human life matters. 12 boys and their soccer coach on a campaign trip were trapped in a cave by monsoon floods. They did not just turn to prayers or fasting. Instead, they called on Thailand's elite military forces and requested for emergency help from other countries. They called in helicopters and millions of dollars to save 13 people. Nigeria, on its part, has not spent anything close to what Thailand spent in rescuing thousands of its own hard-working citizens who are at the mercy of herdsmen, terrorists, and bandits. However, a brilliant remedy to tackle the menace of murderous headsmen has been suggested, and it's very simple. The government and the private sector must invest in the production of animal feeds This will minimize cattle grazing and, by extension, minimize or totally eliminate the confrontation between farmers and herdsmen. So why isn't this administration taking such steps to save Nigerian lives instead of brandishing their slogan of "giving land for ranching is better than debt"? As Chinwe Achebe said in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria. The trouble with Nigeria is simple and squarely a failure of leadership. It took the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency only 10 minutes to get to the scene of the recent Otedola Bridge tanker explosion. It took the state governor, Akinwumi Ambode, mere hours to get to the scene for an on-the-spot assessment. Can we compare this to the shoddy manner the federal level has responded to the killings in Plateau, Benue, or Taraba? But beyond a dire security situation, there are many other issues tormenting our country, and this questions our position as the so-called giant of Africa. For decades, we have fluctuated with the production of just 5,000 megawatts of electricity, when as a nation of almost 200 million people, we need at least 30,000 megawatts of viable electricity to operate minimally and become active participants in the global economy. As I speak, about 2,000 children under the age of 5 and about 145 childbearing women could have died by the end of today because of our failing healthcare system. We embarrassingly and shamefully have the third highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the world. According to UNICEF, Nigeria currently has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. 10.5 million Nigerian children are not in any kind of school. Over 60% of these children are in northern Nigeria, where many of the killings in our country are taking place. What I am trying to underline is that the time has come for us to get rid of sentiments and look for the type of first-class leadership that will place strong emphasis on safety and prosperity of all Nigerians. Or, as General T.Y. Danjuma said, we will all die one by one. Fellow Nigerians, what I'm saying right now is that our country is highly insecure. The regard for human life has never been so low. Our economy is wobbling, and we are faced with a looming famine because our farmers can't go to their farms because they fear for their lives. The primary responsibility of any government is first and foremost the protection of lives and property of its people, and we have obviously failed in that regard. We in the National Assembly have come up with an initiative to introduce state police in our constitution. Thankfully, strong voices such as Vice President Yemi Oshibanjo have given their thumbs up to this initiative. What you can do as a citizen of this country is call on your constituency senator or member of the House of Representatives and implore them to support this initiative. And lastly, I also endorse the call by many concerned Nigerians that the 150,000 officers and men of the Nigerian police force currently guarding Nigerian VIPs should be recalled and redirected to core police duties of protecting lives and property of everyday Nigerians. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless Nigeria.